The Broken Promise. The Incident at Nexus Station. Lieutenant Nora Blackwood adjusted her diplomatic uniform one final time before stepping into the Grand Bazaar of Nexus Station. The massive trading hub buzzed with activity as beings from across the galaxy conducted business in a symphony of clicks, whistles, and translated voices. As Earth's newest diplomatic attaché, Nora had been assigned what everyone called a simple mission: oversee the opening of humanity's first permanent trade booth. Simple. That word would haunt her for the rest of her life. The booth itself was a marvel of human engineering, designed to showcase Earth's finest exports: coffee, chocolate, music, and literature. But there was something else, something that made Nora's stomach twist with unease. The location. Command had insisted on this specific spot, Sector 7G, claiming it offered the best visibility for potential customers. What they hadn't realized was that Sector 7G sat directly adjacent to the Memorial of Silence. The memorial nobody explained. The Memorial of Silence was a peculiar structure, even by galactic standards. It appeared to be nothing more than an empty circular space marked by crystalline pillars that hummed with an almost inaudible frequency. No signs explained its purpose, no barriers prevented passage, and most species simply walked around it without comment. Nora had asked her predecessor about it during the handover briefing, but Lieutenant Commander Phillips had been distracted by his upcoming transfer to Mars. Oh, that thing? Some old alien monument. Don't worry about it, nobody uses it anymore. He was wrong. Catastrophically wrong. The Awakening. As Nora activated the booth's holographic displays, showcasing Earth's blue oceans and green forests, she noticed something strange. The crystalline pillars began to pulse with a brighter light, their humming growing more audible. Alien passers-by stopped their conversations, many dropping to their knees or assuming various postures of reverence. A Zephyrian trader, her gossamer wings trembling, approached Nora with obvious distress. "Human," she whispered, her voice like wind through leaves, "what have you done?" Before Nora could respond, the Memorial of Silence erupted in a cascade of colors that painted the entire sector in shifting patterns of light. The humming became a song, hauntingly beautiful and impossibly complex. Every alien in the vicinity had stopped what they were doing, many with tears streaming down their faces or whatever equivalent their species possessed. The realization. Through her translation device, Nora began to understand the magnitude of what was happening. The Memorial of Silence wasn't abandoned or forgotten. It was the most sacred site in the galaxy, a place where the first compact had been signed millennia ago. The compact that established the fundamental laws of interstellar cooperation, the treaty that prevented galactic wars, the agreement that made peaceful coexistence possible. And humanity had just violated it. The memorial only awakened when the compact was broken, when one species committed an act so fundamentally against the spirit of galactic cooperation that it threatened the very foundation of their civilization. The last time it had activated was over 3,000 years ago, when the Krillian Empire had attempted to enslave an entire star system. The accusation. Within minutes, representatives from dozens of species had gathered around the memorial. Their anger was palpable, their confusion genuine. How could the humans, these newcomers who had been welcomed into the galactic community with such hope, have violated the most sacred law in known space? "You mock our most holy site," accused Xenarch Vorthak, a towering hegemony official whose scaled hide rippled with barely contained rage. "You place your commerce next to the Memorial of Silence. You treat our most sacred space as a backdrop for profit." Nora felt the weight of 1,000 alien eyes upon her. Her diplomatic training kicked in, but the words felt hollow in her throat. We didn't know. Earth surveys indicated this was commercial space." "Ignorance is no excuse," hissed a serpentine delegate, her forked tongue tasting the tension in the air. "The memorial teaches itself to those who approach with respect. Your species approached with greed." The growing crisis. As news of the incident spread through the galactic communication networks, the situation escalated beyond anything Nora had trained for. Trade agreements were suspended. Diplomatic channels went silent. 3 different species recalled their ambassadors from Earth, and the Galactic Council announced an emergency session. The Memorial of Silence continued its song, broadcasting across subspace frequencies that reached every corner of known space. It was a funeral dirge for the first compact, a lament for broken trust, and a warning that rippled through the consciousness of a trillion beings. Nora stood at the center of the storm, her simple trade mission having become the spark that might ignite the first galactic war in millennia. Her communication device buzzed with increasingly frantic messages from Earth Command, but she knew that no amount of explanation could undo what had been done. The humans had broken something precious, something that had held the galaxy together for thousands of years. And now, as alien warships began moving toward the outer rim and trade routes shuttered across multiple sectors, one terrible question echoed in every mind. What would humanity do now? The weight of words. Emergency at Earth Command. General Marcus Sterling had seen combat across 3 star systems, negotiated ceasefires with hostile alien factions, and survived the Martian rebellion of 2151. But nothing had prepared him for the sight of his command center in complete chaos. Every screen displayed the same horrifying reality: humanity's first diplomatic crisis was spiraling into something that could destroy them all. "Sir, we're receiving reports from across the galaxy," reported Colonel Janet Hayes, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. "The hegemony has mobilized their 3rd fleet. The Zephyrian Collective has closed all trade routes to human vessels. And the Serpentine Confederacy just declared us enemies of cosmic order." Marcus rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of 8 billion human lives pressing down on his shoulders. On the main screen, the Memorial of Silence continued its haunting song, broadcast live from Nexus Station. The crystalline pillars pulsed with colors that somehow conveyed centuries of accumulated grief and betrayal. The scope of the disaster. "Get me Professor Williams from the Xenological Institute," Marcus ordered. "I need to understand exactly what we've stepped in." Professor Elena Williams appeared on the holographic display within minutes, her usually composed demeanor cracked with stress. "General, this is worse than we initially thought. The Memorial of Silence isn't just a monument, it's a living record of every species' commitment to the first compact. Explain it to me like I'm 5 years old, Professor." The first compact established the fundamental principle that no species would exploit sacred spaces for commercial gain. It was signed by the first 47 species to achieve interstellar travel, including some that are now extinct. The memorial doesn't just commemorate this agreement, it psychically connects to the collective consciousness of every signatory species. Marcus felt his blood run cold. "Are you telling me that every alien in the galaxy felt our mistake?" "Not just felt it, General. They experienced it as a personal violation. Imagine if aliens had built a shopping mall on Arlington Cemetery, then broadcast the grand opening to every American simultaneously. Now multiply that feeling across thousands of species and billions of individuals." The galactic response. Intelligence reports flooded in from across human space. The situation was deteriorating faster than anyone had predicted. The crystalline hive mind had gone completely silent, their previously warm diplomatic relations freezing overnight. The aquatic republics had withdrawn their entire merchant fleet from human ports. Most concerning of all, the ancient wanderer ships, mysterious vessels that had maintained peaceful contact with humanity for decades, had simply vanished. "Sir," interrupted Lieutenant Commander Torres, "we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They're demanding our immediate appearance before the emergency tribunal." Marcus activated the communication array. The holographic display filled with the imposing figure of High Arbitrator Kithra, a member of the Eternal Caste whose species had been mediating galactic disputes for over 10,000 years. "Humans of Earth," Kithra's voice resonated with the authority of eons, "you have violated the most sacred law in known space. The Memorial of Silence weeps for the first time in 3 millennia. Species across the galaxy demand justice. You will present yourself before the tribunal within 7 rotations, or face the consequences of your actions. The impossible choice. After the transmission ended, Marcus's command staff stood in stunned silence. 7 rotations, roughly 2 Earth weeks, to somehow repair damage that had taken seconds to inflict but affected the very foundation of galactic civilization. What are our options? Marcus asked, though he dreaded the answer. Colonel Hayes consulted her tactical display. Militarily? We're outnumbered approximately 40,000 to 1. Our entire space fleet wouldn't last an hour against a single hegemony battle group. Diplomatically? Marcus turned to his senior advisor. Sir, we've already received formal notices from 93 species. They're not interested in negotiations. They want justice. Marcus studied the star charts showing human colonies scattered across 12 systems. Families, children, entire worlds that had never heard of the Memorial of Silence were now in mortal danger because of one misunderstanding. The weight of command. There has to be something we can do, Marcus said, more to himself than anyone else. Humans don't just give up. We find solutions. Sir, Professor Williams interjected softly, there might be a precedent. In my research, I found references to something called the Great Contrition, a ceremony performed by the Krillian Empire after their violation 3,000 years ago. What happened to them? They no longer exist as a species. But not because they were destroyed. According to the records, they chose to dissolve their empire and scatter across the galaxy, dedicating their lives to serving other species as penance. The command center fell silent. Marcus stared at the memorial's pulsing light, understanding now that this wasn't just about politics or diplomacy. This was about the soul of humanity itself. The decision. Contact Ambassador Hartwell, Marcus ordered finally. Tell him to prepare for immediate departure to the Galactic Council. And get me a direct line to the President. Sir, what are you planning? Marcus Sterling, veteran of 3 wars and guardian of human space, looked at his staff with grim determination. We're going to do something that might save us all. We're going to tell the truth, accept responsibility, and hope that the universe understands that sometimes, even good people make terrible mistakes. As alarms continued to sound throughout the command center, Marcus realized that the next few days would determine whether humanity would be remembered as the species that broke the galaxy's most sacred promise, or as the one that showed what true remorse could accomplish. The Memorial of Silence sang on, its song now reaching Earth itself, where 8 billion humans were about to learn the terrible price of their innocence. The gathering storm. The Galactic Council chambers. Ambassador Tobias Hartwell had negotiated humanity's entry into the Galactic Confederation. He had secured trade agreements with 17 species and prevented 2 minor wars through careful diplomacy. But as he stood before the assembled representatives of the galaxy's greatest civilizations, he felt like a child who had accidentally broken his grandmother's most precious vase. The council chambers were a masterpiece of architecture that defied physics, floating in the void between 3 stars with viewing walls that showed the cosmic dance of celestial bodies. Today, however, the usual sense of wonder was replaced by an atmosphere of barely contained rage. The humans will speak, announced High Arbitrator Kithra, her ancient voice carrying the weight of millennia. Let them explain their desecration of the Memorial of Silence. Tobias stepped forward, his diplomatic training warring with the simple human need to apologize. Around him, delegates from hundreds of species watched with expressions ranging from disappointment to outright hostility. The testimony. Honored representatives, Tobias began, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. Humanity comes before you not to make excuses, but to acknowledge a terrible mistake. We violated the sanctity of the Memorial of Silence not through malice, but through ignorance that we now understand is no excuse. A ripple of discontent moved through the assembly. The hegemony delegate, Xenarch Vorthak, rose from his position. Ignorance? You claim ignorance of the most sacred site in the galaxy? Every species learns of the memorial before they achieve interstellar travel. It is fundamental to galactic civilization. That is precisely our failing, Tobias replied. We assumed that because we achieved space travel, we understood space civilization. We were wrong. The accusations mount. One by one, representatives of different species stood to voice their grievances. The Zephyrian delegate spoke of how the memorial song had sent their entire population into mourning. The aquatic republics described how their deepest meditation pools had been disturbed by the psychic shock. The crystalline hive mind, speaking through their singular voice, expressed confusion that had fractured their collective consciousness. For 3,000 years, intoned the representative of the eternal caste, the memorial has been silent. It awakened when the Krillian Empire attempted to enslave the Gentle Ones. It should not have awakened again in our lifetimes. The ancient wanderer delegate, a being so old that their species had forgotten its own origins, spoke in a voice like distant thunder. Young species, you have broken something that cannot be mended. The memorial does not sing for small offenses. It sings for violations that threaten the very foundation of peaceful coexistence. The revelation. As the accusations continued, Tobias began to understand the true scope of what humanity had done. The Memorial of Silence wasn't just a monument, it was a living link to the galaxy's greatest achievement, the end of the age of conquest, when species had preyed upon each other in endless cycles of war and domination. You want to know what you have done? The speaker was Matriarch Zilla of the Serpentine Confederacy, her scales shifting colors with emotion. You have reminded every species in the galaxy that the peace we have built is fragile. That it can be shattered by carelessness as easily as by cruelty. The memorial song carries across subspace, added the ethereal collective's representative, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline shell. Every child in the galaxy has heard it. They ask their parents why the memorial weeps. How do we explain that the newest species has already forgotten the lessons that cost us millions of lives to learn? The unexpected voice. As the condemnations continued, an unexpected voice spoke from the assembly's shadows. The Gentle Ones, survivors of the Krillian Empire's attempted enslavement, had sent a representative. Their delegate was small, barely reaching Tobias's waist, with large eyes that held depths of ancient sadness. We remember, the Gentle One said softly, their voice somehow carrying across the vast chamber. We remember the last time the memorial sang. We remember the fear, the pain, the certainty that our species would not survive. The chamber fell silent. The Gentle Ones rarely spoke in council, their traumatic history making them prefer observation to participation. But we also remember what came after, the delegate continued. The Krillian Empire chose redemption over defiance. They scattered themselves across the galaxy, spending generations making amends. They became the galaxy's gardeners, the peacekeepers, the healers. They transformed from conquerors into servants. The question. High Arbitrator Kithra studied Tobias with eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. The question before us is not whether humanity has violated the first compact. The memorial song provides that answer. The question is whether humanity will follow the path of redemption or the path of destruction. We choose redemption, Tobias said without hesitation. But we don't understand what that means. It means, said the Gentle One delegate, that humanity must prove they understand the weight of their actions. Not through words, but through deeds. Not through apologies, but through service. The Wanderer delegate nodded slowly. The memorial will not fall silent until the violation is addressed. But addressing it requires more than acknowledgement. It requires transformation. The challenge. Very well, High Arbitrator Kithra announced. Humanity will be given the opportunity to make amends. But understand this, the process will be unlike anything your species has ever attempted. You must visit every species affected by your violation. You must understand their pain, their history, their connection to the memorial. Only when you truly comprehend what you have broken can you begin to repair it. Tobias felt the weight of the challenge. Visit every species? There were thousands of them, scattered across the galaxy. Some were barely accessible to human physiology. Others had never been contacted by outsiders. How long do we have? He asked. The memorial will sing until it is satisfied, Kithara replied. That could be years, decades, or centuries. But understand this, while it sings, the galaxy remembers. Trade will remain suspended. Diplomatic relations will remain frozen. And if humanity fails in this task, the consequences will be permanent. As the council session ended, Tobias realized that humanity's real journey was just beginning. They had broken the galaxy's most sacred promise, but they had also been given something precious, a chance to prove that even the youngest species could learn the hardest lessons. The Memorial of Silence continued its song, and somewhere in that haunting melody, Tobias heard both judgment and hope. The human solution. The mission begins. Dr. Benjamin Cross had spent his career studying alien cultures, but nothing had prepared him for the task ahead. Standing in the cramped quarters of the diplomatic vessel Endeavour, he reviewed the impossible list: 1,247 species affected by the memorial's activation, spread across 847 star systems, many of whom had never welcomed human visitors. The first stop is the hegemony homeworld, announced Captain Rebecca Torres, her voice carrying the strain of weeks spent preparing for this unprecedented mission. They've agreed to receive us, but only because the Galactic Council requested it. Benjamin nodded, checking his cultural briefing files one more time. The hegemony were proud warriors whose honor code was older than human civilization. Their homeworld, Krekstar, was known for its crushing gravity and violent storms. Most importantly, they had lost over 1 million citizens in the last Great War that preceded the First Compact. The hegemony homeworld. The surface of Krekstar was a harsh landscape of crystalline mountains and storm-lashed plains. Benjamin struggled with the intense gravity as he was escorted to the Hall of Remembrance, where Xenarch Vorthak waited with his war council. Human, Vorthak's voice rumbled like distant thunder, you come to our world seeking what? Forgiveness? Understanding? We are not known for either. I come seeking to understand what we have taken from you, Benjamin replied, fighting to keep his voice steady under the crushing weight. The memorial song reached your people. I need to know what it means to you. Vorthak's scaled features shifted in what might have been surprise. You ask not for forgiveness, but for comprehension? How can we make amends for something we don't understand? The lesson of warriors. What followed was unlike any diplomatic meeting in human history. Vorthak led Benjamin through the Hall of Remembrance, where crystalline walls displayed the memories of the time of conquest. Benjamin watched in horror as civilizations fell to species that placed profit above principle, strength above mercy. The Memorial of Silence marks the moment we all chose to be better, Vorthak explained, his massive form moving with surprising grace through the hall. When the Krillian Empire violated the Gentle Ones, the memorial sang. But when the Krillians chose redemption over pride, it taught us that even the mightiest can learn humility. And when our trade booth activated the memorial, every hegemony citizen felt the echo of those ancient violations. Our children woke screaming from nightmares of wars they had never seen. You reminded us that the peace we have built is fragile. Benjamin spent 3 days on Krekstar, learning about the hegemony's warrior culture and their surprising dedication to protecting weaker species. By the time he left, he understood that humanity hadn't just broken a law, they had shattered a carefully maintained trust. The Zephyrian Collective. From the crushing gravity of Krekstar, Benjamin traveled to the floating cities of the Zephyrian Collective. The gossamer winged beings lived in crystal spires that danced through their planet's eternal storms, their entire civilization built on harmony and consensus. Your violation created discord in our collective consciousness, explained Matriarch Sylphina, her translucent wings catching the light of their 3 suns. We are a species that feels together, thinks together, dreams together. The memorial song of pain became our pain, shared among 17 billion souls. Benjamin spent weeks learning to navigate the Zephyrians' complex social structures, understanding how their empathic abilities made them natural peacekeepers. Their connection to the memorial ran deeper than most species. They had been among the first to sign the first compact, their empathic nature making them ideal mediators. The Aquatic Republics. The underwater cities of the Aquatic Republics presented new challenges. Benjamin required extensive life support modifications to survive in their deep ocean environment, where pressure and darkness created a world alien to human senses. The memorial song disrupted our deep meditation, explained Elder Thalassa, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with emotion. For our species, the deep places are sacred. We commune with the memories of our ancestors in the abyssal trenches. When the memorial sang, it brought chaos to our most sacred spaces. Benjamin learned that the Aquatic Republics had been among the most devastated by the pre-compact wars. Their ocean worlds had been strip-mined by conquering species, their population reduced to a fraction of its original size. The memorial represented their rebirth, their emergence from near extinction to become valued members of the galactic community. The pattern emerges. As Benjamin traveled from world to world, species to species, a pattern began to emerge. Each civilization had its own connection to the memorial, its own understanding of what the first compact meant. But underlying all of them was the same fundamental truth: the memorial wasn't just a monument to peace, it was a promise that the galaxy's youngest species would never repeat the mistakes of the past. The crystalline hive mind showed him how their entire consciousness had been fractured by the memorial's activation. The Serpentine Confederacy explained how their scales had changed color galaxy-wide in response to the psychic shock. The Eternal Caste shared memories that stretched back to the signing of the first compact, when they had been young and idealistic. The burden of understanding. After 6 months of travel, Benjamin found himself on the distant world of the Gentle Ones, the species that had suffered most under the Krillian Empire. Their delegate from the Galactic Council, a being known only as Keeper of Sorrows, met him in a garden that bloomed with flowers from 1,000 worlds. "You have traveled far, human," the Keeper said, their large eyes reflecting depths of ancient wisdom. "What have you learned?" "I've learned that we didn't just break a law," Benjamin replied, his voice heavy with the weight of months of revelation. "We broke faith with the galaxy itself." Every species that signed the first compact did so because they had experienced the alternative. War, conquest, exploitation, they all chose to reject those paths. And humanity? Humanity never had to make that choice. We achieved space travel during a time of peace. We never faced the temptation to conquer or the fear of being conquered. We thought that made us fortunate. But now? Benjamin looked out at the garden, where flowers from worlds he had visited bloomed in careful harmony. "Now I understand it made us dangerous. We were the only species in the galaxy that hadn't learned why the memorial exists. We were the only ones who could violate it through ignorance rather than malice." The return. When Benjamin returned to Earth, he carried with him more than just reports and cultural data. He carried the weight of understanding, the burden of knowledge that came from seeing humanity through the eyes of 1,000 different species. "The memorial will not stop singing until we prove we understand what we've done," he reported to the assembled leaders of Earth. "But more than that, we need to prove we've learned from it. Every species in the galaxy has earned their place through suffering and growth. Now it's our turn." General Sterling leaned forward. "What does that mean, practically?" "It means we don't just apologize," Benjamin replied. "We transform. We become the species that the galaxy needs us to be, not the species we thought we were." As he spoke, the memorial song continued to echo across the galaxy, a reminder that some mistakes can only be corrected through fundamental change. Humanity had learned what they had broken. Now they had to prove they could rebuild it.